Double loyalty's cost. Living a double life doesn't just mean lying to two masters, it means becoming so fragmented that you forget which version of yourself is real, and Severus Snape spent 17 years playing both sides so convincingly that when he died, even the people he'd protected weren't sure who he truly was. The psychological cost of being Dumbledore's spy while pretending to be Voldemort's most loyal servant didn't just require skill, it required Snape to commit actual atrocities to maintain his cover, atrocities he could never confess to anyone, not even the man who sent him into the darkness. Snape's double agent status began the night Lily died. He begged Dumbledore to protect her, failed, and then offered his services as a spy out of grief and guilt. But Voldemort wasn't an idiot. You don't just rejoin the Death Eaters after vanishing for years and expect trust. Snape had to prove his loyalty repeatedly, and proof meant participating in raids, tortures, and murders. He fed Voldemort real information mixed with strategic lies, then reported back to Dumbledore about Death Eater plans while omitting the horrible things he'd personally done to earn that intelligence. The specific crimes remain largely hidden, but we know enough to be disturbed. Snape killed Dumbledore in front of witnesses, which cemented his position as Voldemort's right hand. He ran Hogwarts under Death Eater occupation, allowing the Carrows to torture students. Though he minimized damage when possible, he still permitted enough cruelty to maintain his cover. He likely participated in at least some of the attacks on Muggle families during the Second Wizarding War, because being absent would have raised suspicion. Every time he cast Crucio to prove himself, every time he stood by while others suffered, a piece of his soul corroded further. The worst part, he couldn't tell anyone the full truth. Dumbledore knew the general outline, but not every dark deed. The Order of the Phoenix saw him as a necessary evil but never trusted him. Harry and his friends despised him. Snape lived in complete isolation, unable to defend himself, unable to explain, unable to seek comfort or forgiveness, because doing so would blow his cover and render Lily's sacrifice meaningless. He carried the weight of his crimes alone, knowing history would remember him as a Death Eater who murdered Dumbledore, not as the man who saved the wizarding world from the shadows. When he died on the floor of the Shrieking Shack, bleeding out from Nagini's bite, he gave Harry memories, but even those memories were carefully curated, showing only what Harry needed to know. Lily's obsessive love. What happens when the love you carry for someone isn't the pure selfless devotion everyone believes it to be, but something darker, possessive, jealous, and rooted more in what you wanted her to be than who she actually was? Snape's love for Lily Evans is held up as the ultimate example of tragic devotion, but the truth he took to his grave is far more uncomfortable. He never truly let her go, never accepted her choices, and his protection of Harry wasn't entirely noble. It was the last way he could possess a piece of her, even in death. Snape loved Lily from childhood, but that love curdled into obsession during their Hogwarts years. When she chose James Potter, the boy who bullied Snape relentlessly, Snape didn't just lose the girl he loved, he lost the future he'd constructed in his mind where Lily belonged to him. He called her a mudblood in a moment of humiliated rage, but that slur revealed something deeper. His love was conditional. He wanted Lily as long as she fit into his world, as long as she chose him over everyone else, as long as she validated his worth. When she made her own choice, his love turned bitter. After her death, Snape's grief transformed into something that looked like penance, but was actually prolonged possession. He kept her memory locked away like a treasure no one else could touch. He produced a Patronus in her image, a doe, which seems romantic until you realize he was literally conjuring her spirit to comfort himself. He protected Harry, yes, but he also resented Harry viciously for having Lily's eyes in James's face. Every time Snape looked at Harry, he saw the living proof that Lily had chosen another man, had built a life Snape wasn't part of, had loved someone else enough to die for their child. Snape never moved on, never loved another person, never allowed himself relationships or happiness, because that would mean admitting Lily was truly gone. His entire identity for 20 years revolved around a woman who had been dead longer than she'd been alive. He built a shrine to her in his mind and called it love, but healthy love doesn't chain you to the past. It allows growth, change, acceptance. Snape's love was a prison he chose to live in. The darkest secret, part of him was glad James died too. He never admitted it, probably never even acknowledged it consciously, but when Voldemort killed James Potter, Snape lost nothing. His grief was solely for Lily, and somewhere deep in his damaged mind, there was satisfaction that his rival died first. The prophecy's weight. How do you live with yourself when you're directly responsible for the death of the only person you ever loved? Not through accident or bad luck, but because you personally delivered the information that put a target on her back. Snape overheard part of Trelawney's prophecy in 1980 and ran straight to Voldemort with it, never imagining for a second that the Dark Lord's equal could be Lily's child, and that single act of loyalty to Voldemort signed her death warrant. This is the secret that haunted Snape every single day until his death. He murdered Lily Potter as surely as if he'd cast the killing curse himself. The scene happened at the Hogshead Inn in Hogsmeade. Dumbledore was interviewing Sybil Trelawney for the divination teaching position when she entered a genuine trance and spoke the prophecy about a child born at the end of July who would have the power to defeat the Dark Lord. Snape, still a committed Death Eater at the time, was eavesdropping from outside the room. He only heard the first part, the bit about the child being born to parents who'd thrice defied Voldemort before Aberforth Dumbledore caught him and threw him out. But that fragment was enough. Snape didn't hesitate. He went directly to Voldemort and repeated what he'd heard, proud to deliver valuable intelligence, expecting praise and reward for his loyalty. He had no idea two couples fit the prophecy's criteria, the Longbottoms and the Potters. When Voldemort chose to target the Potters specifically, when Snape realized Lily was about to be murdered because of information he'd provided, the horror of what he'd done crashed down on him. He'd been so eager to prove himself, so desperate for Voldemort's approval, that he'd condemned the only person he'd ever cared about. That's when Snape went to Dumbledore, begging him to hide Lily and her family. Not Harry, not James, just Lily. Dumbledore saw through him immediately and called him out for his selfishness. Was Lily's life worth more than her husband's and son's? Snape didn't care about them, only her, which revealed how twisted his priorities were. Dumbledore agreed to protect all three Potters in exchange for Snape's service as a double agent, but we know how that ended. Pettigrew betrayed them. Voldemort murdered James and Lily, and Snape was left with the unbearable knowledge that his own actions had caused it. He never told Harry the complete truth about this. In his final memories, he showed Harry that he'd loved Lily, that he'd tried to protect her, but he never explicitly admitted that he was the one who told Voldemort about the prophecy in the first place. The Unforgivable Mask. There's a difference between pretending to be evil and actually committing evil acts, and Snape crossed that line so many times during his years as a Death Eater that the mask became indistinguishable from his face. We know he was a Death Eater before he switched sides. We know he spied for Dumbledore afterward. But what we don't know, what Snape deliberately took to his grave, was the specific body count, the names of people he tortured, the families he helped destroy before Lily's death gave him a reason to stop. These weren't acts he could blame on maintaining cover as a spy, because most of them happened when he was genuinely loyal to Voldemort's cause. Snape joined the Death Eaters sometime after leaving Hogwarts in 1978, drawn by their pure-blood ideology and the promise of power. This wasn't reluctant participation or coerced involvement. He sought them out, took the Dark Mark willingly, and spent roughly 2 years as an active Death Eater before Lily's murder changed everything. 2 years is a long time during a war. The First Wizarding War saw hundreds of deaths, countless tortures, entire families wiped out. Snape was there for many of those operations, wand in hand, standing alongside Bellatrix Lestrange, Antonin Dolohov, and the other monsters. We get hints of his capacity for darkness throughout the series. He invented Sectum Sempra, a curse designed to slash enemies as if cut by an invisible sword, causing potentially fatal bleeding. That's not defensive magic, that's a spell created specifically to maim and kill. He also invented Levicorpus, which seems harmless until you realize it was used for humiliation and could easily be weaponized. His school nickname was the Half-Blood Prince, and his personal spellbook was filled with dark magic experimentation. This was someone fascinated by the mechanics of causing harm. As a Death Eater, Snape likely participated in raids on Muggle families, attacks on Order members, intelligence gathering through torture. The Death Eaters didn't have passive members. If you wore the Dark Mark, you got your hands bloody. Snape was talented, intelligent, and useful, which means Voldemort used him operationally, not just as a researcher. Did he kill anyone during those 2 years? Almost certainly. Did he torture captives for information? The evidence suggests yes. Did he stand by while others committed atrocities? Absolutely. Here's what makes this secret so dark. Even after switching sides, even after devoting himself to protecting Harry, Snape never confessed these specific crimes. He never named his victims. He never sought forgiveness from their families. Dumbledore likely knew in general terms but never pressed for details. The final sacrifice. Choosing to die is one thing, but deliberately orchestrating your own murder, knowing you'll be remembered as a traitor and a coward by everyone you ever protected, that requires a level of selflessness most people can't comprehend. And it's exactly what Snape agreed to do the moment Dumbledore asked him to raise his wand against the only person who'd ever trusted him completely. Snape didn't just die for the cause. He died hated, misunderstood, and vilified, taking secrets to his grave that would have redeemed his reputation because revealing them would have compromised the mission. This final sacrifice was so complete, so total, that even in death he couldn't defend himself. The plan began when Dumbledore returned to Hogwarts with a cursed blackened hand after destroying Marvolo Gaunt's ring Horcrux. The curse was fatal, giving him maybe a year to live. Dumbledore saw an opportunity. He needed to die anyway. The Elder Wand's power needed to die with him to prevent Voldemort from becoming truly unstoppable, and Draco Malfoy had been ordered to kill him, which would destroy the boy's soul. Dumbledore asked Snape to kill him instead, to spare Draco, to cement Snape's position as Voldemort's most trusted lieutenant, and to ensure the Elder Wand's power would end. Snape begged him not to ask this. Dumbledore insisted. Snape agreed because that's what he'd been doing for 17 years. Whatever was necessary, no matter the cost. On that astronomy tower in June 1997, Snape cast Avada Kedavra at the only person in the world who knew the truth about him. He murdered his one ally, his confessor, the man who'd given him purpose after Lily died, and he did it in front of Harry Potter, ensuring that Lily's son would spend his final year believing Snape was everything James had always said he was, a coward, a murderer, Voldemort's creature. Snape became headmaster of a Hogwarts occupied by Death Eaters, ran the school under Voldemort's regime, and endured the hatred of everyone, staff, students, the Order, while secretly protecting them all from the shadows. The memories he gave Harry in his final moments were carefully chosen. He showed his love for Lily, his role as Dumbledore's agent, the truth about Harry being a Horcrux, but he didn't show everything. He didn't show his worst crimes as a Death Eater. He didn't explain the full extent of his sacrifice. He didn't reveal how many times he'd saved lives while being cursed as a traitor. He gave Harry just enough truth to complete the mission. Nothing more, because even dying, Snape's priority was the mission, not his legacy.